Do you want to get in early on the next tech revolution? Why should you get into Web3 and how can you do it?
I'm Rob.
I'm John.
And this is the Mint One podcast,
where we talk all things Web3 and the rise of blockchain gaming.
So John, if people want to get into Web3 before the crowds return, how do they do it?
Well, this is the episode for you. Let's dive right into it.
So this is the bit where I shill the podcast to you. You know I'm not very good at this, but we need likes, follows, shares, comments, tweets, all the usual stuff. Any way you interact with the internet, interact with Mint One Podcast in some way, because it helps us get in front of more people, which helps Web3 as a whole. So if you don't do it, you are damaging Web3. That's
terrific.
Logical, right? It's logical. Okay, so this episode, we thought there's sort of a little spike in interest in Web3 I've noticed lately. When the markets were crashing, everything really, like the interest fell off a cliff. I mean, we saw it in page views, we saw it in the Twitter sphere and all those metrics. So that was hard. But now it feels like maybe, I'm not going to say we've reached the bottom, because Web3 has a wonderful way, crypto especially has a wonderful way of showing us there's new bottoms. But it does feel like we're starting to see some interesting games. A lot of metaverse projects are spiking. I don't know if you've seen this, but I've been writing an article for the last 2 days, which will be live when this goes up, I think, on the metaverse Second Life, not Second Life, which is an old game. And it did really, really well in like 2021 when all the metaverse tokens were spiking. And then it died. It looked like it died. If you look at the graphs, like the UAWs, Unique Active Wallets, it looked as if it died. And then it just resurrected. It found its second live. And it came back from the dead. And now it's lurking at all-time highs on UAWs, on transactions. Very odd, but not entirely alone. If you look at things, you can look at several metaverses and they are trending upward, which is unusual because you could be tricked into thinking Web3 is 100% dead and buried, because the only media you see really is 90, what's the stat that's been going around? 95% of NFTs are worth zero or something like that.
Yep.
Every major media outlet has shared that because people love extreme misery. But then there's been plenty of games and metaverses that have gone the other way.
Yep.
And we've seen this a bunch of times. We saw this after the 2018 crash. We saw people just flood in. And when people start flooding in, you're like, if it's new to you, you're like, okay, right, this is catching fire again. Let's like, what is this? Like, how do I get involved? I'm interested. It's really hard to know where to start because it's such a deep and complex ecosystem made up of tiny other ecosystems. It's insane. So John suggested, let's do an episode on how beginners can get into it, get started, and we'll just sort of give you some advice from people that have been in here for a while. Does that about summarize it?
Yeah, I think that's about right. We were talking just before the podcast how it strangely feels like it's more difficult to get into Web3 today than it was kind of 2-3 years ago when I joined, just because there's not this insane rush of people, so it's kind of difficult to know where to start. And there's not many beginners in the space, let's say. But as you say, kind of the bottom's fallen out of the market for a lot of the NFTs that, to be honest, should have no value. A lot of the grifters, a lot of the people who were just around to make a quick buck.
Absolutely.
And conversely, a lot of the more quality projects with proper teams on them and real talent are starting to make real moves. And that doesn't just include games, although a lot of them are coming to the fore. I know in the past week, Pudgy Penguins are now in Walmart. You can buy Pudgy Penguin toys. Cool Cats have their Macy's Thanksgiving Parade balloon in a couple of weeks' time, I believe. Well, later on in the year, but it depends when this podcast comes out. And yeah, as much as, the general public hates the idea of Bored Apes and Punks being sold for ludicrous amounts of money, they're coming along with their other side metaverse, and they have numerous other projects in the works that actually look cool. Yep. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and I guess the crux of it is there's many more things of substance to get into now. It's not just speculating on which strange JPEG is going to be worth a lot of money. It's now, there's this cool game where you can actually own the cards or your skins or whatever it is you're playing with, and there's actual places we can point people to now and say, if you're interested in Web3, go check this out. So I think it's a great time to get people on the or help people get on board. So
yes,
where do you think people should start if someone has absolutely no idea what Web3 is, where they should go, what they should do? Where's the first place you would point them to?
So I'm torn on this. I think it depends on the person. So if you are fairly tech-minded, you're interested in tech, then I think it's worth going through some basic articles on what blockchain is and how it works, so you know what the benefit of using it is. For that, there are, just so many resources. You could pretty safely Google the basic questions, and the top ranking answers, like websites, will be things like Masari and DappRadar and Chainalysis. Chainalysis is a very good resource for that sort of stuff. So that can give you a bedrock of the tech. If you don't care about the tech, and honestly, these are the people I want to see more of, the people that just like, okay, I can own it, I can sell it whenever I want, I like NFTs, I'm into this, where do I start? I think that's a harder question to answer, because again, it's going to come down to what are you interested in? Because if you're interested in Web3, you're probably not interested in Web3, you're interested in elements of it.
Yeah.
So it could be the games, although I don't think the people interested in blockchain games will really be interested in Web3 as a whole. They'll be interested in the game that caught their eye.
Sure.
So, perhaps they'll end up looking at the rest of Web3, but I think really it's going to be people that have seen all these businesses and growth opportunities, and they're curious about the utility of NFTs and why they're not just, static pictures or a little revolving GIF that's worth millions.
Yep.
So I think it's tough. I don't know where to send them for. Do you have an answer to this straight off the top of your head? Because the techie people I can answer, but the people that are just curious about Web3, I don't know where to send them first.
Yeah, I don't have a go-to answer. But I think for the gamers, there are a small handful of games that I would point them towards. So obviously from a card game point of view, there's basically just Gods Unchained and Skyweaver. Both take kind of different takes on the TCG genre, but at the core of them both have roughly an equal approach to how they implement ownership of your cards and, the ability to buy, sell, and trade them. So Skyweaver is my personal favorite. If you are, or if you like Hearthstone, if you like Magic the Gathering, Skyweaver is really easy to get into, but it has a tremendous amount of depth. Plus with the added bonus that, you can win cards that then you can go sell on the marketplace, blah, 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 blah. You don't need to put any crypto in to begin with. It's totally free to play. And Gods Unchained in the same vein, totally free to play. You can create some great decks with your free cards, but I think it's more difficult than it is in Skyweaver to have kind of a competitive advantage in that respect. But it's another great option. If you hate card games, then it gets a little more difficult, but there are some games that are starting to kind of push the boat out. There is it called Sparkball now?
I get confused. So the reason John's asking that is because it's gone under two names. But yes, I think it's called Sparkball at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Sparkball is it was a kind of a mix between a MOBA and I wouldn't say kind of a MOBA plus football plus basketball.
They did call it something like League of Legends meets Rocket League.
Yeah, something like that. Which is it's a terrific concept. If you like MOBAs, then give that a go. There are also games such as Grit, although it's not on hiatus, but it's nobody really knows what's going on with it.
What's going on with that.
But if you like battle royales and you like Wild West themes, then you can go try that out. Honestly, Metalcore, another great example. If you like PlanetSide 2, large scale battles. If you're a fan of Battlefield, etc., definitely give Metalcore a go if you can get a hand on it. I think it's still in closed beta, but I think it's relatively easy to get keys now.
Yep.
So, or if none of those sound appealing and you just want a long list, just go to the Epic Games Store. They have an entire Web3 section.
Yes, that's actually a really good idea.
So, it includes Gods Unchained, it includes Grit, and I'm sure there's some other gems in there. So, if you're just interested in the idea of, owning your items or having that kind of CSGO skin owning experience, but instead of just having that currency locked into the Steam ecosystem, being able to kind of pull that currency out and more easily go and use that for other things, then just head to the Epic Games Store.
Yeah, I'd also add on to the end of that Fractal.is and the Elixir game launcher are both good. And I'll add Ultra as well, Ultra.io. So that's a pretty good way of getting into gaming. And then obviously read TokenGamer.io because I cover blockchain games basically every day of my life.
What a plug.
You've got to do it. I've got to pay the bill somehow. I thought of a way. I've got my phone in front of me because I think one of the best ways to get into Web3, you're already doing if you're listening to this, which is podcasts. Podcasts are a great way to keep up to date, but also cover the high-level concepts and listen to people who are actually building Web3 in front of you. Now, the ones, this isn't an exhaustive list by any means, but the ones that I've always listened to, or at least I've listened to for well over a year, probably 2 years, is The Breakdown with NLW, which is a short form podcast that he does daily. He also does another podcast daily on AI. The guy is an animal, but he's a really smart guy, and he's just on every topic that trends in the news. He covers it immediately. So if you're in the gym and you want to learn about something and you don't have time to read it, he's your guy. Then Unchained, which is the CoinDesk podcast, that's really good. There's some really high level stuff. If you want to get deep into that, that's very, very good. Bankless, that's more cryptocurrencies, but obviously that's a fundamental part of Web3. It's particularly the financial side. Then I also listen to, this is how many podcasts I listen to, and this is just blockchain and Web3. Blockchain Insider by 11FS. That's really good. Again, it's very high level topics, particularly regulation and stuff that they cover. And then it says Mint One is the end of my list, which is myself. So I've already plugged that.
Terrific.
Yeah, so I think podcasts are a great way to get into Web3, and there's way more than that as well. There's very niche ones that. So I tend to listen to the macroeconomics kind of blockchain technology, the builders, the deep business side, regulation, and basically the boring stuff. I like to surround myself with the really boring topics. But then, although there are fewer these days, there are still plenty that are NFT centric around Bored Ape and the other side. I believe the other side has its own podcast, or the guys there have a podcast. Most ecosystems have a podcast.
Yep.
Which brings us beautifully onto ecosystems. So I'm going to let you start here. If someone comes into Web3 or they start Googling around Web3, they're probably going to see the word ecosystem a fair amount, by which is meant. You know what? I'm going to let you explain. So, what do that in a Web3 context? What do they mean by ecosystems, and can you give us some examples?
Sure. So, let's take a macro view of things. There's particular cryptocurrencies that are based off particular coins, let's say. The two most well-known cryptocurrencies are Bitcoin and Ethereum. You've probably heard of them before. For the most part, if you're getting into Web3 or Web3 products or Web3 games, you can pretty much ignore Bitcoin. You're not really going to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, unless within the next 6 months somebody creates a freaking Web3 game with ordinals in it. If you are, I don't know why you are, but I mean, anyway.
Check out our episode on ordinals if you want to know what on earth that meant.
Yeah, 99% of what you'll want to care about and be interested in will be based on Ethereum. That's the level 1 coin. And branching off from Ethereum, there's things like Polygon, Immutable, a whole bunch of other things, and they have kind of different specializations, let's say.
Yeah.
Immutable X is centered around games, so For example, you can use the IMX cryptocurrency across the various Web3 games. Polygon, they have games as well, but they're into like music and other kind of entertainment-backed ventures. So, the crux of it being, if you play a game that's built on Polygon, you might earn a token or you might gain an NFT that's Polygon-based, and you can trade it within that ecosystem, basically. It's not something that you need to be intimately aware of. It's not going to affect your day-to-day experience, but, if you get more into it, you've been playing a game for a while and you have these assets and you see that, these are on Polygon or these are on Immutable, then, it'll affect what marketplaces you can use and what tokens you have, blah, 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 blah. But hopefully that's the kind of thing that good user experience will help to kind of stamp out as time goes on, because at the end of the day, nobody really cares. We just want items we can trade.
I agree. And I think the advice I'm about to give won't age well over the course of 5 to 10 years, but I think it's important now. And coming to Web3, it's expansive, it's a little bit confusing. You'll read things like bridging tokens from one thing. You don't need any of that. Yeah. If I were you, I would start by picking one ecosystem and just figuring out what it's about, what marketplaces you can use, what wallet's best to use it, probably MetaMask or something similar, but just learn about one ecosystem. I think Polygon is a good place to start because of how diverse it is.
I agree.
And so you've got plenty of games. The game I was reviewing last week is Mojo Melee, which is a sort of auto chess battler kind of game. And I got an NFT in that for Polygon. So Polygon is probably one of the broadest blockchains in terms of ecosystem reach. They are in every industry you can think of. As John said, they're in music, they've got art, they've got finance, they've got gaming, they've got kind of everything. So I would pick an ecosystem, but more or less, it could be more or less at random, just to get started and see and learn each place and what they do. And some are specialized, like IMX, Immutable X is just gaming. As far as I know, I don't think they have anything but gaming. They're specialized for that. Polygon's far broader. Obviously, Ethereum is what a lot of ecosystems are built off of. So we're not going to go into the layer 2, layer 1, because it's just too deep into the weeds. But Ethereum is extremely broad because it also breeds other ecosystems. There's so many that I'm trying to think of a useful advice to offer someone who's trying to choose an ecosystem to get started with. I think I'd just choose Polygon every time.
Yeah, I think it has to be Polygon, really. And to be honest, I wouldn't worry too much about which ecosystem you're on. I would go find something that you like first.
Yeah, find a project that's interesting to you.
Have a look around. If you like metalcore, go play metalcore and then worry about what ecosystem it's on later. Although, I agree with you. I think Polygon would be my first choice for a couple of reasons. One, I think Immutable kind of has the same problem that Wax had, is that if you own a chain but you're also a game studio, inevitably you're going to start promoting your own games over what other people are building. Polygon doesn't have that problem. And two, there's just so much more variety on Polygon. Funny enough, I'm getting more and more into sim racing at the moment. There's a media group that's been around for a couple of years that has just kind of transitioned into being like, oh, you can own a part of us by owning our cryptocurrency now.
Really?
Yeah, I mean they're a pretty big org, Veloce. They've got esports teams and websites and social media and all this stuff. But no, that's it seems to be seeping more and more into everyday life. I mean, as I said at the start of the podcast, you can go and buy Web3 related toys. I mean, they're just toys, but they're related to a Web3, a brand that started in Web3 in Walmart. And, if you watch Macy's Parade this year, you'll see the Cool Cats balloon. And, there's all sorts of ways these things are breaching into everyday life kind of under the radar at the moment because nobody cares about Web3. So
yes, but there's these little gateways that they keep opening that people might just wander into and hopefully find this video. And the reason, so there's two reasons why I think some of my advice on picking ecosystems will age poorly, or at least I hope they age poorly, because one is the opposite of what blockchain was intended for is walled gardens. That's the opposite of what Web3 stands for. It wants to be inclusive. It wants to be freely traded. Like cryptocurrencies were meant to be completely borderless. So having ecosystems like Polygon and Wax and Flow and Ethereum and IMX and so on is like having walled gardens. And when I said bridges, basically they're connections between the two ecosystems, and they're cropping up everywhere. But I think what will eventually happen is the walls will just come down, and it won't really matter which ecosystem you're in, or if you're interacting with multiple. I mean, MetaMask is one of the wallets that you can have as a browser extension, and you can hold many different cryptocurrencies and NFTs on lots of different chains. That kind of solves a lot of the problems. I mean, now the UX for MetaMask has improved so much over the last couple of years, because now if I open games all the time to have a look at them and you see how they're getting on, and you sign a transaction, which can be a little bit scary, but just read what you're signing, and usually it's fine, especially if it's a trustworthy project.
Yep.
And it just switches chain for me and connects with the game, and that's that. Like, it is pretty easy now. It's almost one click every time you go to a game. So I think in the near future, that'll be just how it is. You won't have to think about that. But at the moment, it can be confusing if you started playing metalcore, for example, and then you're like, oh, I've seen this really interesting music project or a really interesting DAO or something on Flow. Why can I not use my NFTs from metalcore on the Flow blockchain? It's because everything's separated at the moment, but that won't last forever. And that could be a little pain point, I think, of someone just coming in.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to deep dive into it and learn how to, bridge NFTs and tokens between chains, you can get into that. But I don't think it's for this episode. Yeah. But I mean, as you said, I think the user experience is getting better and better, and hopefully within the next couple of months, couple of years, we won't have to worry so much about telling people you need to do this or worry about this. I think to add on top of that, you'll very quickly, as you get into Web3, come across a lot of advice saying, oh, you must have a hardware wallet, you must do this with your keys, blah, 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 blah. I think we're probably at the point where, I mean, I'm all for security. If you want to be super secure, definitely go get a hardware wallet, learn how to use it, blah, blah, blah. But to be honest, if you're just starting out, you're not going to be holding NFTs worth thousands of dollars. I mean, if you are, and you really want to deep dive into it that much, absolutely go do what you can do to secure your assets. But if you just want to get into some games and have some fun, just use your common sense, but just get a MetaMask, sign in with your Google or whatever, and you'll be fine. You really don't need to worry about, having to go to the ends of the earth to make sure your things are safe. As you say, it's getting easier and easier. And within time, I'm sure all the boffins will figure out the security side of it. So there we are.
The next thing I think we should talk about really is NFTs. So I think a lot of people will be interested in NFTs, even if they've not been sold on them in the past, and they've just seen the news articles of them selling for hundreds of millions and stupid things happening around that. I think we're in kind of an interesting spot with NFTs. So as I mentioned, the headline that everyone was talking about is most NFTs are worth nothing. Most NFTs have lost at least 90% of their value. So that it sounds as if it's not worth getting involved, but there's multiple reasons why NFTs are still absolutely fundamental to Web3. Firstly is the obvious thing we've already talked about, is ownership, like owning items in games. So you will probably interact with NFTs on that front if you're into games or anything like that. But I think the really interesting one now is art NFTs. Is it worth buying art NFTs? My answer to that is yes, but not as an investment. I think it's, and that's not necessarily a catch-all statement either. There will be NFTs that are art NFTs that will be worth a good amount of money, and there will be ones that go up in value, but don't expect what happened in 2021 to repeat itself, because it won't. It's just not going to happen. Now we're focused primarily on one thing really with the NFT market, which is utility. So now the only thing people care about is utility. And what we mean when we say utility is the NFT does something else. It's not just something to look at. it opens a door to something. So a game NFT is an NFT with utility because you can use it in a game, even if it's just a skin, even if it's just cosmetic, it has use. The reason Bored Apes still sell for quite a lot is they get you into the Bored Ape Yacht Club parties, and it acts as like a member's pass. So it puts you in an exclusive club that you can get value out of. So that's kind of a new form of utility that I don't think people really predicted, but still utility nonetheless. And then I think we will see down the line the utility of blockchain to people who make digital art will resurface. So although it won't be stupid speculative prices, a way of selling your work digitally as a photographer, as a an artist, will return, and people will realize, oh, that is actually a very good way of owning a piece of digital art. So although I really, really wouldn't treat them as investments anymore. I mean, I'm not good for financial advice, obviously. Hashtag no financial, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But the NFTs, don't discard them just because of what you read about the values and stuff. They're still the bedrock. You've got cryptocurrencies, you've got NFTs. They really are two key components to how Web3 works, how it functions. So get to know them a little bit. Do you think, is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way of putting it. And I think we're probably at a strange point at the moment where a lot of the people that are earning or otherwise getting a hold of NFTs or cryptocurrency are probably doing it unintentionally rather than intentionally at the moment.
Yeah.
With Starbucks loyalty systems, and I know there's been even more watch brands now using NFTs as to verify the authenticity of their timepieces. So it's if let's say you join that Starbucks loyalty system and you don't really understand it, blah blah blah, it's worth looking into, and it's worth kind of understanding exactly what you have and realizing that Starbucks aren't the only people to be testing out this technology. There's a whole industry that is being built around this new tech and what it could possibly do for us in the future. And to take another backward step to an even wider macro level, it's a very exciting time for technology in general with AI and blockchain, and how those two may or may not interact, how they may or may not converge, etc., etc. So it pays to be one step ahead and even just know the fundamentals of what Web3 is and what an NFT is and what it means. Removed from the whole headline grabbing, these 100K sales of blah, 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 and, this meme sold for X amount of money. I'd take a step back from the headlines and just have a look at the technology and, work out for yourself whether you think it'll be valuable. I think we're both in the camp that it has value. Not everyone agrees, but I'm sure there's plenty others that do. So there we are.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of Web3 right now is being at the technological forefront. So I think at the moment, like you said, the technology is exciting at the moment. I think there are three, possibly now I'd go back to saying 4 exciting aspects. So you've got blockchain, AI, cloud, and I'm going to sort of go back to VR, AR, virtual reality, augmented reality, or MR, mixed reality. We're starting to see that get to a consumer level that we were wanting 15 years ago and didn't really get. So it's a great time for that. Now, cloud technology is absolutely unbelievable, but painfully boring. Like, it's very difficult to get excited about cloud tech. So you probably don't want to learn about that too much. AI is absolutely everywhere. It's another very interesting area, but it doesn't really have like a community. It feels extremely technological centric, where it just has its uses and people are interested in how to use it. There are AI communities. I'm in a few of them, but it's not quite the same because the technology itself hasn't been utilized to bring people together or to marry people that are interested in one topic or another. Blockchain, the technology itself, I guess, doesn't either. But what it has spawned, this kind of decentralized digital ownership wave that has solved so many problems we've had for so long with digital lives. And perhaps I should give a quick summary on that. So the thing I always say is, basically, life has been becoming more and more digital for the last 30, 40 years. And, once we sent a letter, now we send an email. Once we bought a newspaper, now we read a website. Like, everything is becoming digital, and not being able to own anything that you had digitally was an issue. That was a blocker. And also, who controlled data, who controlled the internet, another massive political problem. And blockchain solves these two problems, and that's why so many people are excited about it. So blockchain, even if you're not interested in the tech itself, what it has spawned and what it will continue to spawn is fascinating to me and to so many other people. And presumably, if you're here, you're broadly interested in what blockchain is causing. One of these is the term I think we should certainly touch on, but by me bringing it up, it means I've got to ask you it, which feels as if I'm throwing you a grenade. The metaverse. So Is that something people should still care about? What does it mean? Good luck with that one. Hit me with some info.
Well, I think what does the metaverse mean is probably the easiest. Well, I think it's probably the easiest. It's the easiest one to answer out of all of those. I mean, if you're a gamer, then a metaverse is basically just an MMO. You can think of it as an MMO. The ideal, or the kind of the dream of what people are trying to achieve when we think of the metaverse, is basically interconnected MMOs. Being able to jump directly from Final Fantasy to World of Warcraft to EVE Online to Star Citizen, whatever. Is that realistic? No. Is it going to stop people from trying to build it? No.
Well, I think it's not realistic right now, but we're quite far down the line. It probably is.
And I think the idea is, or at least it's just kind of what Mark Zuckerberg is trying, I think, to build with Meta, is to be kind of the Amazon of metaverses in a strange way, or maybe the Steam of metaverses is a better way of putting it. So he's trying to create the platform, which is the metaverse, and then other people will create and sell experiences and other bits and bobs that are built on top of the metaverse. So that's possibly I don't know if it's a good way of explaining what it is, but I think it's probably the easiest way to understand. Should you worry about it? I think it's something you should at least have kind of a tacit understanding of what one is, although I don't think we're very close to there being a metaverse anytime soon. Facebook made a big deal out of rebranding to Meta a couple of years ago, and I think ever since Mark Zuckerberg has been inundated with questions saying, where have you pissed all this money on? Why have you pissed away all this money to? So it's not something that's going to come around anytime soon, I don't think. We've talked previously on the podcast about, the likelihood of companies such as Meta, such as Epic, being able to create a metaverse, and, is it likely? How would they go about doing it? We've talked at length about Unreal Engine and Fortnite and whether they could, provide the building blocks to metaverses. But I mean, it's something, if you're interested in, you can, read up on the latest news and all this kind of thing. But do you need to worry about it right now? No. It's kind of like VR in that kind of sense. Mark Zuckerberg's just talked about the MetaQuest 3 and what it might be able to do and all this kind of thing. But do you need a VR headset right now? No. If you care about VR technology, sure. I've got a Quest 2. I still use it a few times a week. But unless you're a proper enthusiast, you don't really need to care right now. But I'm sure when the time comes for the metaverse, as it may do for VR and has certainly done for the internet and other industries in the past, there will come a point where it's a no-brainer because everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. So keep an eye out for when that is.
So, despite the fact that I think too many people are using the term, despite the fact that I don't think it's very easy to give a definition of what it is because we're still not entirely sure what form it will take, I'm still pretty positive that the metaverse and Web3, I think, as terms may end up conflating, because it's essentially a digital life. Now, it's no... People mock Mark Zuckerberg a lot. I've done it too. he's sometimes a bit of a funny guy, but he's also a very, very clever guy, and he doesn't go all in on something that is just mindless. He sees the future of the internet and the direction we're going, and the direction we're going is towards something that could perhaps come under the umbrella term of a metaverse. And the likes of Tim Sweeney of Epic Games have also said that they believe Fortnite is just like a prototype metaverse. And the reason why I personally think it's still an important thing that we're working on is all indications so far have pointed towards it. If you look at our digital lives, we like Web 1, where you just looked at a piece of text on a website. We want a more fulfilling experience, and gaming goes up. The number of gamers go up year on year on year. It's now one of the biggest industries in the world without fail. And we like our digital lives. Our digital lives have been these sort of isolated experiences, but it feels like every decade we're moving towards something more all-encompassing. So more and more of our life is online, more and more of our life is digital, and it feels as if that's somewhere we're going to end up. There's also been plenty of examples of games that have tried to tap into that. MMO as an entire genre is basically built on the same sort of thing, where you have an online life, a digital life, which doesn't necessarily have to represent you physically, but that's a completely different and very complex topic of identity, which I don't want to get into. But yeah, I still think this is where we're heading. The social aspect of it, I think, is, if you just strip it back, boil it right down to the basics, I think a metaverse would be a better online social experience, if done correctly, than chatting to someone on Facebook Messenger, or even in some regards a Zoom call, which after COVID, there was a lot of research done on connections you have with people over Zoom calls. And these connections just aren't as good as in real life. And I don't think we'll ever be able to replicate that because there's things like little delays and stuff. And people's micro expressions are coming at the wrong time when you're saying something. And there's just a slight mismatch. It's like uncanny valley. It looks as if it should be right, but it isn't quite right. And we're missing those connections. And I think we can improve on that, and we will improve on that. And I think the way we do it, it may involve VR, MR, AR, whatever. But I think turning our online life, our digital experience, into something more 3D and more all-encompassing feels inevitable. I think there will be a day where we look back at like Steam's UI, where you click store and then you click library. I think there's I'll click my friends list and scroll through and see what they're playing. I think there'll come a time, probably in my lifetime, definitely in your lifetime, where that will seem really antiquated, like a really odd and old way of doing things. If you look at how people used to consume the news and media, you would sit down at 6 o'clock in front of your TV and you'd watch whatever they told you. And that was it. That's what you got. Or you'd buy the newspaper, you'd open it and you'd read whatever they'd written down. Now we pick our news. We watch our news on TikTok and Instagram Reels and Facebook Reels and YouTube Shorts. And now we have all these options and it comes to us. And that was a massive revolution. And I think the next one is even more freedom. It seems as if the digital life has just been trending towards more freedom, which is exactly what Web3 and the metaverse is about. So although we may be some time off of it, it feels like the right direction. And that's why, if I were you, I would be just interested enough in it to keep up with what's happening and the advancements. And this ended up like a soliloquy. I got really into that. But that's why I think the metaverse is still worth following and being interested in.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
I'm not sure if you'd agree, but I think my opinion right now is I think a lot of the projects out there that are calling themselves metaverses just feel quite antiquated right now. They're nothing really new. If anything, they're a step backwards from MMOs. And I think once this ideal of what the metaverse is can achieve this almost like a convergence of the MMO experience, but with that kind of Zoom-esque feeling peppered in there, How that's achievable, I'm unsure. Cleverer people than me will need to figure that one out. But I think once we get that next step of human connection over the internet, I guess that's what the metaverse will become. Again, we're trying to talk about a term that's not well defined. We just know it as the next step beyond Zoom, beyond Google Meet, beyond MMOs to some newfangled, most likely platform as a service thing, but we'll see how that develops. It's an interesting thing to talk about and theory craft on, but yeah, it's some time away.
Yes, it is. Is there anything else we should cover? If you were coming into Web3 today, I wish we had live chat running.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I don't think there's too much else to talk about, really. You know, if you like art, go find art you like. If you like games, go find games you like. If you've heard of the terms metaverse and Web3, then, you know, I hope that we've at least somewhat answered what those things are for you.
There is actually, I think, one thing we should add. One of the best things about Web3, particularly when it's busy, I think there's a lot of downsides to it being very busy and a lot of eyes on Web3. But one of the benefits is community. I think the communities are fantastic, particularly, as we mentioned, ecosystems. I as John knows, and I know John feels the same, I hate tribalism in Web3, where people pick an ecosystem and they're like, everything else is going to die and we're going to the moon. And I don't think that's helpful. And I don't think it's a very Web3 mindset, ironically. But the communities around things like, so we both have massive roles within Wax community, and you get to know the people around, and there's like this camaraderie, and it's almost like being in a guild in a game where there's just lots and lots of people all doing their own different things that you can interact with. I think if you're looking to get into Web3, finding a community is a good idea, and it's so easy. Even if you're the most introverted person on earth, just find one that's vaguely connected to something you're interested in. Even if it's an entire ecosystem, then join the Discord and just type hi in one of the channels. I'm new, whatever, and you'll find you're integrated with people so quickly. Like Wax, I made so many friends and colleagues and stuff just writing about Wax, because that's all I was doing to start with. I wrote a few things about Wax and why I liked it as a blockchain. And suddenly, you know, I'm talking to you, I'm talking to the other guys at Atomic Hub, I'm talking to Stuck at 6 p.m. who's creating these Discord bots and games, and, you know, Sergio Lupe with his art. There's so many characters and stuff in there that really is one of the best parts, because if you can find communities for anything. You know, if you're interested in football, you can find a football community. If you know, whatever you're interested in, there's a community. But Web3 is so broad that you might wonder, but like, how do I find other people that are into Web3? Just go to an ecosystem, go to a collection of NFTs, go to a game, whatever, and jump in their Discord, and you'll soon find it. Also, Twitter Spaces. I've noticed that that's quite a good little sort of watering hole for people talking about any given topic or project. And it is, for me, it's one of the real benefits of working in Web3 is a fantastic community. And when the crowds start rushing back in, when Bitcoin spikes up like 30% in a day or something ridiculous, which will inevitably happen down the line, everyone will start rushing back into Web3. The benefit of that is the communities. So make sure you're involved in some way. It'll be a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, I think if you've got the capacity to really dive into Web3 communities, there's a lot of fantastic people you can meet. There's a lot of great content and great conversations to be had. Obviously, recently I've taken a step back from Web3 over the last 2-3 months. I'm not as connected as I was before. I think from a macro level, I don't feel I'm missing out on too much. Like I'm not losing out from like a fiduciary point of view because I'm not speaking to people every day. But I think it's a great community, and it's a great asset you can have if you want to be a part of it. You know, it is just a click away. It's very easy as a complete newbie to, you know, get a start or make friends or make colleagues, etc. in the Web3 space, especially with things like Twitter Spaces. You know, there's plenty of people in Web3 that stream games. You know, Discords are very easy to hop in and out of. it's a great way to get more involved if that's something that you would like to do. Well, I know if you are in Web3 for financial reasons, I don't think you should be. But way back in the day when I joined, people were saying, "Oh, the best thing you can do with anything crypto Web3 related is just to buy things and then ignore everyone and hold on to them," which maybe works back in the day when things hit their all-time highs. But I think I'm kind of have that attitude today. With the Cool Cat I own and the Deadfellers and things I own, it's great to be involved in the day-to-day and doing all the the weekly tasks and all this kind of thing. But you're not missing out on anything huge if you want to take a step back and just, relax for a while. So it's great that you can have that kind of varied level of involvement. And either way, you'll find an experience that you can have. If you take a step back, you're not losing out on a bunch of things. If you jump in, then there's a whole world to explore. So, yeah.
And also, I'll just tack one last thing on the end of that. Is if you're one of those sort of entrepreneurial folk that likes to build things, Web3 is a fantastic space to build because people seem to just rally around you. When you build a tool or a product or a platform or whatever, people rally around you very, very quickly. It's very easy to find people that just for free want to talk about your products and help you in some way. And also from a financial standpoint, there's lots and lots of grant systems, more than I've seen outside of Web3. So if you want to build something, figure out like Alien Worlds has a grant system, Polygon has a grant system, Flow has everyone has some sort of grant system. So if you want to build something, if you fancy not only being part of Web3 but building something within it, you'd find funding. Even today, even with everything as low as it is right now, I still think you'll find funding easier than outside of Web3.
Yeah, it's never been easier to get into being a game developer or a programmer than it is today. Virtually anything you could ever want to learn in any skill is available for free on YouTube. So if you've always had a dream of wanting to create your own video game, or you have this, idea that in the back of your head that you've wanted to work on for years, there's no better time than now. And I think Web3 is a technology, there's plenty of people trying to find the next Fortnite, the next GTA 5 in the Web3 space. So you'll certainly get some help along the way. So cool. I think that probably wraps it up. I don't want to go
too deep because I thought about talking about DAOs, but it gets really nerdy and a little bit boring, and I think you don't need to know about them really.
At least to me, kind of DAOs fall in the same kind of sphere as metaverses, where they're cool, and
community. It's kind of in between the two, isn't it?
Kind of they're cool on paper, but there's not really any good real examples of them yet. At least
I think there are a few that are running quite well. There's lots and lots of concepts that would just go too deep into the weeds for somebody who just wants to stick their head around the door and say, "What's this?" Like, I've been waiting for a while and now I'm kind of interested. I'd like to know a little bit more. So I think we covered most of what you would need to know. If there's anything you're confused about or anything you'd like to learn more about, leave it in the comments. We have done episodes based entirely on comments before. Someone's left a comment, and the Ordinals episode, wasn't it, where someone was like, "I'd love to hear you talk about Ordinals," and we were like, "We love that you commented that, so well, here's your Ordinals episode."
For sure. And like Rob said, if you've got any questions about Web3 at all, we have a huge back catalogue of episodes talk about a whole range of different things.
Or you can ping us on Twitter.
Ping us on Twitter, ask us in the comments. We're here to help. Put it that way.
So, we've started two-manning our Twitter, so we're twice as responsive. So if you have any questions or criticisms, I liked one of the questions. I've forgotten his name, and I feel like I should at least name check him because it made me laugh out loud when he asked if your hair color changes based on employment. Was that to do with you left the topic up and your hair changed? Was that related? That's a great observation.
It's a very good question. Funnily enough, I think through my entire time with Pink, I never dyed my hair, but I had dyed hair both before and after. So maybe he's onto something there. I guess we'll see with whatever I end up doing next. But
it was Gaspode WD. He works at Wolvesdale and Paladindale. That really tickled me. So I thought I'd bring that up.
I think I need to get back to him on that. We'll see. Anyway,
I did. I replied on your behalf. And so basically we need to wait until you get your next major role and then see what happens with your hair. So we have more evidence, more data to go on.
Well, hey, fingers crossed we won't have to wait too long before figuring out whether my hair next changes. But anyway, that is episode 81 of the Mint One podcast. Rob, where can we find you?
You can find me at tokengamer.io, where we have all the latest blockchain gaming news, AI gaming news, all technology involving gaming. It's mostly blockchain, but there's more AI stuff lately. There's now more VR stuff as well, with new VR headsets coming out and Apple throwing their hat in the ring. We also cover some cloud stuff, the interesting version. I recently did a guide on why cloud technology is so important, and I think you saw the Samsung article, didn't you, where that kind of blew my mind, that the latest Samsung TVs have cloud gaming inbuilt, and you can play the latest AAA games on the highest settings just with a Bluetooth controller and your Samsung TV. You need a good internet connection, but if you have one, that's it. You don't need a console, you don't need a PC, you don't need anything. That's amazing to me, and I don't think enough people are talking about it. So anyway, we cover all stuff to do with technology and gaming. Find us on LinkedIn. I tend to share a fair bit there, and then me personally on LinkedIn, I think is LinkedIn.com/RKBags, where I'm trying to talk more because PR people shout at me. Not actually, I need a personal brand, but God, that sounds so disgusting to me. But I'm trying to talk more, so you can encourage me. John, where can people find you?
You can find me personally at Hydropowered, HYDROPWRD on virtually everything. Twitter is the best one for me. For what I'm doing right now, you can check out topsplit.gg or at topsplitgg on pretty much everything. Again, the Twitter is probably the best one. It's a busy time in the sim racing world. Forza's coming out. You got the new EA Sports WRC game coming out next month. Ren Sports involved in a boatload of drama right now. There's a lot going on. So deluge of videos are going to be hitting my YouTube feed soon. So yeah, keep an eye out for that.
Nice.
I am still open to new opportunities, and I'm looking around. So okay, if you want this face in your company, say hello to me.
Please. Hire and just see what happens with his hair, if nothing else.
Yeah, I may or may not dye my hair to whatever company colours the next my next employer is. So
that's what I want to see. And now I want a company that is, like really eco and green to hire you, just to see if you can follow suit.
It's been many a year since I last had green hair, so
the fact that you've ever had green hair is a podcast episode on its own.
I've had both like Joker green hair and also like pastel green.
Wow.
So yeah,
I can actually
back
top
in the
that.
day.
I can top that. I had dyed tips. Like the early 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was I found a picture in I think it was like 2002, and I convinced my mum's hairdresser when she came round to do her mum's hair that I needed dyed tips so I could spike it up with the little blonde bits at the top. And then I wear my baggy skate jeans, and it was a dark time. But 100,000 subscribers and I'll do it again.
Oh, hey, we all have a past, so
don't clip that.
There's plenty of. Oh, someone's definitely going to.
Well, I don't. I would redact that.
I might stick it at the start of the episode. Who knows? Anyway,
yep.
There we go. Episode 81 of the Mint One podcast is in the books. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. If you're on Apple or Spotify podcast, a 5-star podcast review would be fantastic. Be sure to follow us at Mint One Pod. And if you've got any questions, let us know. If you've got any episode ideas, let us know. People you want us to talk to, let us know. All that good stuff. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We hope you tune in again next week.